Hello, everyone. This is Abdurrahman Gilal. In our previous presentation, we learned about arrays, and then we discussed that arrays are different than, primitive data types. So, array variables hold homogeneous type of values in a single declared variable. So we discussed that if we want to store students courses, so it is always good to take the series of courses from one student point of view. So today we are going to discuss a multi-dimensional array. I will be trying to explain the same example that we discussed, that if a student has taken certain number of courses, then what are their names and what are their marks or grades for that particular number of courses using multidimensional array in order to simplify the code. But before I go about describing the topic, I wanted to create a theoretical understanding first. So let me just quickly draw something. For instance, that we have integer x value. So this looks like a primitive data type, and this variable is a primitive variable which will store just a singular value, that is of x. So we realize that it is not necessary that the one variable will be holding always one type of value or one value at a one moment. There are a lot of situations where we have to encounter the series of values for one variable, the same like integer x. So for instance, that there is a need, let's say I said one human or one person may not have only single information for him to have. So if I have another information to keep, so I will have to create another variable. So it may go complex in if we are working on programming languages which are middle level of programming languages, which are not very high languages, which are not very low languages. So such type of programming languages usually face this type of issues to interact with the names of variables. So we realize, for example, let's say if I am saying a student, so in natural form, people may think that a student is just a single variable, but that's a very complex kind of thing. So when it's complex, which means a student may have so many things carrying into it. So the students may carry the personal details, so personal details, and then students may carry, their academic details. So academic details, same thing, details, and then they may have, let's say, their fees details, and they may have some other details as well, which may be their co-column activities or some other things. So there can be further things. So let's say if I am trying to take the academic details, students may have semesters, let's say one semester one, semester two, let's say I will say same two, so on, same n. So there can be so many semesters. So each semester a student may take courses. So each semester a student may take n number of courses. So it's not necessary that all the students will be following this structure. So n number, which means it's something different. So even one semester we have so many information to store. It's always good to have array where we can store, multiple information related to one particular stuff, such as let's say courses. So it's easy for me to have the courses so that I can store everything related to courses in my series type of or reference base type of variable, which I just call this one. And it helped me to have access to similar type of things, such as if courses, all courses. But is this a case like that we always have one student in our class? So we are focusing just on one student. So there may be a situation where we have more than one student. So now what we happen, like previously we thought like this, that we have one student and it has a certain number of courses, let's say. So this was courses for one student, right? Student number one. So let's say S1. But it is, as I say, not necessary that we only have one student in the class. So we may have student number two, and he may have either the same number of courses or more number of courses. We have a situation where we have a student number 2. We may have a situation we have n students. So the situation can get complex. In that type of scenario, we have to learn this multidimensional array, that where we have the data representing in the matrix form. So we do not have just singular, direction of the values coming to us, such as zero. So everything is here. We have a number of rows and we have a number of columns. So let's say if I redraw it, I'm gonna say that we have n number of columns. So C0, C1, C2, dot, 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 Cn. And then we have row 1, and then we have row 2, we have row 3, da, 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 and row n. So this type of situation will create a multi-dimensional appearance. And that appearance is not an ordinary appearance. This appearance is actually creating challenges for us. So let's say if I take quickly the example, where are we having such type of things? So the tabulation, that if you usually see this structure is called tabulation structure. So this is a tabulation structure, which means our data is divided into rows and columns. So it's not necessary to have one row. We may have n number of rows, and we do not mean to have only one column, but we have so many columns. So where are we actually facing this kind of things every day, everywhere? So such as I said about the tables, our Excel sheet, I said example of students. The students may have different types of information for them. And it's not necessary that we have one type of student. So when this type of things come, in fact, that in the mathematics, you learned a concept called matrix. So in this type of situation, how you handle, so better you learn about, this multidimensional array concept. I once again say X is integer, and integer may have this only one value. And then I'm declaring, let's say, integer array, and that array is, for instance, let me make it y to avoid confusion. So basically, I am saying that this one, so sorry, okay. So this new keyword I use, and then I put how many, you know, what could be the size of the array. So how many boxes in the memory of integer should I occupy for that variable? So let's say we said 5. So this 5, or let's do not make it 5 to avoid the misunderstanding issues. I make 3. So now these will be 3 boxes in the memory, logically assigned 1, 2, 3. So this will be assigned to variable y. So every time we access to y, basically we are accessing 3 different independent values into it, or different, how to say, simple or singular independent variables into y. So y is composite, or y is carrying more than one variables into it. So they are always called by the index. So they do not have any number, but they are called by the index. So I can call them like this y0, y1, and blah, blah, blah. So there are, now we are going further for the explanation, and this type of thing is called a single dimensional array. So 1D, I can say. This type of array is called 1D array, where we have only one size, and that is this. But now, as we discussed, that we have more than one, I would say, arrays in a one array. So how we can handle 2D, for instance. So the same thing will happen here. I will say integer. I will give 2 square boxes instead of 1 square box. So this will be for the rows, and this will be for the columns. And then here I will declare a name. Let's say I say Z is my name, and then I create new as the same thing as a keyword, and same keyword again, integer. And here I have to define the size. So how many number of rows you want to be assigned to this array, and how many, sorry, this is rows logically, and this is columns, right? So how many rows and columns you want for that? So let's say if I'm saying I want 3 rows and 3 columns, so this is kind of a square matrix, right? So we have equal number of rows and columns. So this is considered to be 2D. Why? This is the first D and this is the second D. So this makes it 2D. So I'm gonna say this is a 2D array. So how will it be represented in the memory? So as soon as I say, let's say integer square brackets, and I say, let's say X this time because we don't have any other representation here, and I say new, and I said, sorry about that. I said the integer, and I say 3, and I say 3 here. So now it declares the space in the memory like this. So we have 3 boxes for rows and 3 boxes for column. So once again, logically, the number will be C0, C1, and C3. So sorry, C2. I'm just putting C for my own understanding, but let's say, how it will actually appear. So this all are the columns. So the column 0, column 1, column 2, row 0, row 1, and row 2. So now if I wanted to access this memory, so how do I access? I should know the number index of row and index of column. So that's how 1, 1. If I want to access this number, if I want to store value here, so I need to know row first and then column later. So this is how it will be represented. Let's say I want to store some values into it. Sorry, this time we don't have to use the integer or float or anything. We have to simply say X. So I want to store value right here in this box, or let's make another box, this one. So how? Logically, I have to put the address of row first, and then I have to put the address of column. So address of column is 2. Now any value, definitely it's integer, so integer will be only single value. So I'm going to say it's 10 or 5 or something. So the 5 will be stored here. That's the point. And if I want to store some value here, so how would I access? The row number is 2, and then the column number is 0. So this is how I will store any value, for instance, 10. So 10 will be stored here. That's how it looks like. Or if you want to go by one, or you want to go something like different, it's also possible. So this appears to be the 2D declaration. So the same thing can happen now for 3D. How it will be happening? So we have to, let's say, integer 3 square boxes, open and close. So what it means that in an array you have another array, and that in that array you have another array. This type of declaration makes three-dimensional array. So you can go until n number of arrays. So this is all. Okay, let me say, like, if you wanted to just quickly go and assign the values to your array, it's also possible. Let's say if you go integer square brackets and square brackets, and then you put the variable called x, and then you directly want to assign the values. So you start with the curly bracket, and then you give the curly bracket. Sorry, so give me a second. Let me clear it. Okay, excuse me, guys. Okay, excuse me about the drawing. So let me come again and start declaring, or initializing. So what is initialization? We already know that this one, when we assign the value, it is a value. Integer x is equals to 5. So this is called initialization. It's not a declaration because it is having data type, the variable name plus the value. So now I am trying to initialize the 2D array. So the standard says that I have to put the name, and then I have to put this curly bracket started, and then I have to put the curly bracket again, and then I put the values 1, 2, 3, and then I put comma here, and then I put 4, 5, and 6. And then I put comma here, so I just ended up here so that we can understand that how it looks like in the memory. So in the memory, this will be considered as the row number row and row number 1. So why I'm saying it, that's because the first row will have this all. When the first row is not finished, then the second row will not be started. The same like in a loop, like if the first iteration is not finished, then second iteration cannot run. So this is the first row, and these are the values of first row. And this is the second row, but index of 1, and then these are the values to that. So in the memory, they will look like this, like 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. How actually they look like in the memory is not the case, but like logical appearance in the memory. So this is 0, 1, 2, and this is 0 and 1. So how many rows we got here? So we got 2 rows here. How many columns we got? We got 3 columns. So indexes will be from 1 to 0. So this is how it looks like. And it looks like very simple, but sometimes when we have a situation where we have to take very, different a number for each of these columns for, or each of these rows and columns from user, and we are manipulating information based on this given scenario. So it appears to be a little bit tricky if we are working with a for loop. So let me quickly see first that I create the simple one in the programming, and then I wanted to take the value from the user, and then I try to put, and then this is how I will end up my this presentation, and I will continue the further explanation about multidimensional in my next presentation. So I have already created the class. So let me, yep. So I have created the class called multidimensional array. So I'm just gonna quickly, create my method. So I will be just quickly working on public static void main that I go with the string args. So if you see this one, what kind of array is it? It is a 1D, 2D, 3D, or which one? So you're gonna basically say it to me. If you say answer is 1D, so that's the right answer because this is having only one square brackets in it, right? So it does not have two square brackets starting and ending, right? So let's say, so now I'm gonna create an array variable. So let's say I said I'm gonna create two-dimensional array for you guys. So the declaration says x1, 2. So as I said, I'm gonna put 1, 2, 3 as the value, and then I put comma 4, comma 5, comma 6 as value, and that's it. So this is making the two-dimensional array without any declaration. So this becomes initialization of initialization of 2D array. Okay, so let's say if I want to print, you should know that we've got for each as well. So I'll be explaining for each a bit later with the example because this is going to give you better understanding if you work with for first and then for each letter. So let's say I'm going to say integer I, it will start from 0 for sure. And then I'm going to take the value until when. So I should be less than or equals to or less than when. So basically this X is having now two square boxes. So I have to know the overall length of rows or overall length of columns. So this is something tricky to understand. So if I say overall length of rows, the rows are 2. And if I say overall length of columns, so the columns are 3. So what should we do? So easy way is that we take the rows first and the columns later. So how do we do that? So by the logical appearance. So let me just quickly draw for you guys. So if I say X is having two square brackets start and end, so the first one is for, you know, for this X, for the rows, and the second one is for the column. This is what we discussed, right? So now, if I say X dot length, so which length will it appear? Will appear here. So it should directly be appearing length of X, which is in axis here. So this will be this area is part of this area, right? So excuse me, just let me, yeah, so this array is part of this array. So this array, the calls array, for instance, is part of the rows array. So if I say x dot length, it will return me the length of rows, not the length of columns, because that columns appear later. So if I want to now see the length of the columns, how should I do that? I put a square bracket and I put the zero index, for example. So each index may have, so this is my zero index, right? So I put zero index or a I variable if I'm using the loop, and I can go for the length. So this makes me give it is going to give me the length of the column. So because each row will have similar number of columns or different number of columns, depends like if you are working on dynamic arrays or static arrays. But let's say if this one you see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So both rows have similar number of columns, but we have two rows. So if I say x0 dot length, it means that 3. And if I say x1 dot length, it will also return me the same thing. So if there is something that if the first row has different length and the second row has different length of columns, so we may have to use a different strategy. It's a very easy strategy if you know how to use the for loop. So it's just better to put just I variable here or J variable here. and then dot length. So this is what I'm going to explain here. So if I know the length, then I'll be explaining you shortly about this as well. So let me quickly finish this first. Yeah. Yeah. So as I say now, first when I have to take the rows, so how will I take the rows? X dot length is good for me, right? So X dot length will give me number of the rows, okay? So basically I will increment with I plus plus. And as soon as I reach to the second, in the body of the first loop, I encounter another array within that. So if you remember our previous example, that usually we have only one, one loop for one array, but because we have two arrays, 2D, that's why we need at least two arrays, two loops if our situation is like that. So how are we going to do that? Let's say I'm going to create integer j is equals to 0, the same thing because columns also starts from 0. And then now which length am I here going to say? So the same thing, x. Here I put, if I put j length, j will be actually every time increasing. So it will be just taking one column and then going back. So better I put this I variable because this I will be giving me the exact number of how to say exact number of row where we are actually working with the internal loop or nested loop. So I'm gonna say now let's say x less than xi less length, which means if this is 0, so 0 length is 1, 2, 3, so 3 will be this point here. So this at this position is this at this example, if I keep 3, it's also gonna work the same. But I'm gonna just make it like this way so that we understand. So that's this loop is for this loop is for rows, and this loop is for columns. So now we know that the internal loop is for columns and external loop is for the rows, because row do not actually have any value, but they have arrays into them, so multiple values. So how I'm gonna now print out? So I'm gonna say system dot out dot println. So now if you wanted to print a message, such as you wanted to say row, which number, let's say row number, let's say which number you were talking about. Let's say I'm gonna say uh, I, because we know the row is always I, and then I'm gonna put this space and then close, or you don't want to give space, this is also perfectly fine. And then which column you wanted to say, let's say you wanted to say column, or you wanted to put column, or you don't want to put column, it depends on you. So let's say if I say row 1 and column, so how do we represent column here? We are representing column here with the j variables. So let's say j, and that's it. So we got this. So now, so I is going to represent me the number of row, and the j will be representing me the position of a column. And now how will I bring the value? So in order to bring the value, so the array name is x, and I put here I, and I put here j. So every time I will be printing I and j all together. So this will actually bring me the value. So if it's 0, so it will bring 0, sorry, it 1, so it will bring 1 and 2 and 3. And every time it will go to the next line. That's just a little bit of different thing. But let's say if I do not print in the next line, so it's good for me. So as soon as the loop finishes, I can go with the same thing to bring it to the next line. So it's easy for me to go println, and I do not press anything. I just simply put nothing in here, so I can put anything. So that's all. So let's run it and see like how it appears. So this is a multi-dimensional array. So let's run it and see how it appears. Excellent. So row 0 and column 1 has value 1. Okay. And then it brings, but it looks like it's a little bit messy. So if I just simply do not put rows and columns, so better I put like this. So nothing to display like rows and column, better we just display like this. Then we see like how it appears. So multidimensional array. So let's say, as I said to you, column number, row number 0, column number 0, we have value 1, and then row number, you know, 0, and column number 1 has 1, and then so it's always, if I'm gonna go for the second row or third row, it's also possible. Or if I wanted to just simply print like this, it's also possible. So it will simply give me some display things, nothing else. So let's run it. So logically, it works very fine that we have first value, which is 1, and then second value is 2, and third value is 3. And then for the next row, 4, 5, 6. So this is all we discussed. So I will be giving you example of students and how we can take this number of courses and the marks in the same array in the next presentation. But so far, if you got any question, please do not hesitate to ask me. So shortly, we learned a two-dimensional array. In fact, we learned the theory of multidimensional array, that how they look like. They are not different from arrays, but within one array, we got another array. So that's how it has, it's slightly different that we have to compute there. Things based on not only one loop, we have to use multiple loops if we are trying to make it a dynamic kind of programming. So thank you so much. If you got any question, please do not hesitate to leave me any comment.